Father's Day weekend. It's having twins, and I've come all the way to my 9th Father's Day. I guess it's my 8th Father's Day, because
you have 2 girls,
9.
right?
Yeah, twin daughters, and they turn 9 next month. Crazy times. We just got back from a softball game.
They participated, or just watched?
Rachel's on a softball team.
Oh, that's cool.
And Lizzie was on soccer, so they're starting to get out and do more stuff. Now, and last time we talked, when was that? When was our last talk? Wasn't that back in the fall?
I'm gonna say it was.
Yeah, because I was in the new house, right? I was in Cornelius. I just was just barely in Cornelius, I suspect.
How'd the launch go?
The launch of him. Quiet. It was super quiet. Now, tour. One of the things they did that I loved was that they reduced the price of Lamentation, the ebook, down to $2.99 as a promotion ahead of him coming out. And then they and Amazon both, and Audible, I think, put together bundle packages of the first 4 books, so that people could kind of get ready for the book coming out. But beyond that, this is the first book I've had come out where we didn't do anything. I ended up scheduling one signing, and I scheduled it myself. And then I went down to San Francisco and did a promotional event. It's an event that happens every month, but it's called SF in SF. And they bring in a couple of readers, and they do a big shindig on a Sunday evening. And it's a really lovely, fun event. I went and I read some short stories and sang a couple of songs. And that was kind of tied loosely to the hymn release, because it was the first weekend after the book came out.
Oh, that's really cool. I just got really jealous of you going down to San Francisco. I live in New York City, but I got jealous of you going to San Francisco.
Yeah. Well, see, you have to meet me down there. It's a great place. It's a great town.
Yeah, I've been only like once or twice. It's beautiful. Well, it's a strange city. It's not. I wouldn't. Would you say it's beautiful? I mean, it's dirty, right? I mean, it's dirty.
Well, it's not. So if I had to put it on a scale, I would much rather spend my time in San Francisco than New York.
Oh, really?
I've only been in New York City for 2 days, but I could just hang in San Francisco forever.
Well, your bosses are here though, aren't they? Tor?
Well, they're not really they're my publisher for that small part of my, it's not a small part of my world. It eventually could be. I mean, obviously my only novels have been out with Tor. But they're not technically. I'm a freelancer, and I'm under contract with them for those 5 books plus a 6th book. If they like whatever it is my next project is, but it's just a contractual relationship. I've been publishing short stories for almost 20 years. Got
that's cool.
A body of work that's around about 50 published short stories and then 5 published novels. So yeah, my publisher's there, my agent is there, but I can kind of be anywhere and do my part. And really, you probably remember this from our last chat. I've been on sabbatical. I just came off sabbatical just in the last couple of months, and I'm just slowly working my way back into it. I'm starting to have business schemes and plans and strategies again. After
actually, no, I didn't know you were on sabbatical at all. Last time we talked, you were done. You weren't going to write ever again. In fact, you're working on your PTSD book.
Yeah, I was, and I remember feeling that way, but I also remember I announced it as a sabbatical probably a couple of years ago. I felt done. I felt very done. I was waiting, and figuring that I wouldn't start kicking the nest, the story nest, until January. So that was the plan. Was after give myself some time. In the new place, start kicking the nest again in January and get back to work slowly and gently.
Yeah.
And so in January, I signed a contract for a short story.
Okay.
And I'm working on that short story now, and I should have it done in another week or so. And then
so you signed the contract in January, and you're still working on the same short story?
Well, kind of, but I started slow. Now you have to remember my old speed. But in the olden days, somebody could call me on a Friday and tell me they needed a 6,000 word short story by Monday, and I would have it to them.
And you could be good to go.
I could jam out 6,000. I could jam out 1,000 words in an hour. So a 6,000 or 7,000 word short story was 2 or 3 hours a day for 3 days.
What does it look like at the end of an hour for you? Is it clean? Is it ready to go? Or is it?
I mean, it used to be. Now, again, we're talking. I'm sure it's still apples and apples, but the apples then were, they were being produced on a regular basis. My neurotransmitters were all firing well. I had a habit of writing in place that, everything goes better if you've been doing it daily for a while, right? And so in this case, at the end of 1,000 words, yeah, usually, and even now, now I'm moving much slower, right? Right now, instead of sitting down and getting 1,000 words in a day, I'm getting 250 words in a day, and I'm calling it good. I'm stopping at the point where I feel like I'm done for the day. And those words are as crisp and my first drafts are pretty clean. So, but yeah,
I never really have a first draft. Everything is always a mess. Constantly tinkering on words all the way through. Yeah, I don't go from A to Z immediately. It's an agony to get through the end of
it. Well, I think a lot of us start there, and it's as we finish and get kind of as we figure, and then everybody has different strengths. Certainly, some people are stronger at revision than they are at drafting. Some people have to fix all their stories, all the time after they've already kind of gushed out a bunch of words.
Yeah,
whereas I write and then think and write and then think and then write and then think, and I build it. I try to measure twice and cut once in my process.
What kind of world are you working in with the short fiction?
I'm working in the named lands. I'm in the world of my series.
Okay, cool.
This is for an anthology. It's called Unfettered 3. Sean Speakman's the editor. He's gathered up other stories from other big worlds. The first one that pops to my mind is Terry Brooks is in there with the Shannara story. The rest, cool. I'm not remembering off the top of my head, but there are several of us that have fantasy series, and we're writing short stories in that world. And then, of course, the proceeds for this anthology go to raise funds for medical to help authors who have medical bills that they can't cover because they don't have good insurance, that kind of thing.
Fantastic.
So it's kind of a cool cause. So yeah, so I'm working on this. This is a story. I don't remember how far into my series you read, but in the second book, we meet a pirate, and we learn that one of my main characters, Rudolfo, sailed with that pirate briefly when he was young. And so this story is a story that takes place during that time. And so I'm building it as I go.
Oh, that's fantastic. And it's going to be out in, you said did you say?
It's Unfettered 3. I don't know when it actually drops. I know that I'm turning the story in before July 1, but I don't know when the book actually comes out. It's been a while. I signed the contract in January, and I don't remember all the details, unfortunately. But it's my first bit of fiction since finishing my novel back in 2016.
Well, what's fascinating to me is your name is going to be mixed up with Terry Brooks's name. You know what I mean? How does that feel?
I'm not sure that it hasn't already been.
What's
that? It's one of those things where I don't honestly know if it hasn't already been. We may have already been in stuff together.
That's interesting.
Because I've been published. I've had short stories coming out since the year 2000, and they've come out in lots of magazines and anthologies. I remember the first time that I started seeing my work come out and I started to look at the tables of contents and was just blown away at the company I was getting published in books and magazines with some of your heroes. It's pretty awesome. It doesn't really ever lose its luster. It's just not as, I don't think about it as much now because it's
well, who's the guy that really kind of rung your bell a little bit and everybody else kind of paled in comparison?
Oh, Bradbury, Waldrop.
You got published in the same thing as Bradbury?
No, I know. See, I don't know if we've been in stuff. I don't know. I think we probably have. Because stuff gets reprinted and gets picked up. I stopped noticing. Somewhere along the way I got busy.
You look at the names though, right? In terms of, do you read the fiction that you're published along with, or does it get arduous?
I don't. I thought I don't read everybody. There's some people that I will read, but not. I'm more of a nonfiction reader these days. I used to just saturate myself with fiction, but now I'm listening to the Harry Potter books with my girls. We're listening.
Okay.
We started we started with the first one in the fall. Yeah, we did. That's right. We started in the fall.
I rung a bell right there. I was like, oh.
Yep.
Still doing
Yeah,
that.
we were listening to. Yep. So now I'm on book 5. So I was on book 1 probably last time we talked, and now we're on book 5, and then I'm listening to a lot of nonfiction, tons of it. Right now, I'm listening to, I think it's called How to Change Your Mind, and I think his name's Michael Pollan, but I'm not positive.
Oh, Michael Pollan. Yeah, man, that's the book. I am into that one. That's the psychedelic book, right?
Yes.
Yeah,
It's the
I'm
book.
totally about reading that.
Yeah, I'm reading it.
It's on my list.
I'm into it pretty. I'm about maybe a quarter of
He
the way
reads
in.
the audiobook, as far as I know. That's him
I
reading
don't
it.
remember. I think that is his voice. I'm not positive.
Yeah.
But I
was
think
listening to him on Joe Rogan just recently.
Well, I love the book, and I have fascination because I'm still. I think last time we talked, I probably talked a little bit about the fact that I've been digging deep into consciousness and kind of the nature of human thought and how thought drives our feelings and how feelings drive our beliefs and our beliefs drive our actions. And so as I dig into all of that, I've been looking at both from the standpoint of consciousness, but then also from the standpoint as a PTSD person. They are finding that like psilocybin and ecstasy are having impacts on. Yeah, they're having an impact upon PTSD, upon depression. They're finding. I was talking to a psychiatrist friend of mine, and she was telling me that they're finding that most of the modalities that are effective in treating people for therapy have to do with the reduction of the ego. And
yeah, man, it's really true. Any problems I have involve me feeling embarrassed or got to man up or some bullshit like that.
Yeah.
And it has nothing, there's no positive things about it. It's all about defending this little kernel of self or something.
Ego. It's ego. It's that self. And it is, and all it is it's just that bit of us that's intended to keep us alive and the most coolest, awesome, wonderful, amazing, worthwhile.
You got to be the best.
Ever,
that's what it's doing.
So that somebody will actually let us create children with them.
Yeah, that's all it's about. Absolutely, 100%.
Keep our DNA moving forward. And so much of the game of life is really all about life making more life. And then we dress it up and turn it into drama.
Well, unfortunately, sentience does that, doesn't it? I mean, we have this unfortunate thing called death looming ahead of all of us.
Yeah, our consciousness, and it's because we're, our complex nature and the size of our brains combined with how consciousness interacts with our brains. It's fascinating stuff. So that's where a lot of my reading is. Right before that, I was reading Paul Simon's new bio, which is actually amazing. That was a lot of fun, and then I. Of course, I've been still listening to Alan Watts and various other writers, but mostly nonfiction. I mean, I also read the Tao Te Ching on a daily basis.
Oh, really?
And that's
you practice Buddhism or?
No, not at all. I actually kind of I actually don't think that you need to practice to find the parts that benefit us.
I've always heard the meditation is you can't beat it. You can't beat actually doing meditation, practicing meditation on a daily basis.
I suspect that. I mean, I know lots of people who swear by it, and I wouldn't suggest that it's a bad thing. I've done a little bit of it, but I think I fall more into that category, and I think that some people have applied the term zazen to it. The idea of sitting meditation, but I fall more into the kind of the meditation of ordinary life. Go for a walk, listen to some beautiful music.
Yeah.
Read a nice poem. Those sorts of things can engage us in a way where you really only need just a split second of being out of your head, right? Out of your sense of self, out of that ego, to recognize what it is. And then once you recognize what it is, I kind of liken it to you just go deeper in the pond, deeper down the bottom of the pool, and you can see that part of you up there kind of moving around, trying to make sure everything's good. But it's not really you. It's kind of a part of the operating system that's trying to make you the coolest, best, most important thing ever, so that you can do your bit in the game. But
compete, put your
exactly. And so for me, I just kind of go to the bottom of the pool and look up. And I do it internally, right? As I have just not found a need to meditate, because I'm enjoying a level of peace of mind that is confounding to what my past experience was. I mean, I'm ridiculously I'm astonished, ridiculously astonished at how much easier it all ended up being than I was making it or believing it.
That's what I hear. I hear it's real simple. I hear that the answer to it is just it doesn't matter at the end of the day. Like what we make complicated doesn't at the end of the day really freaking matter.
Yeah. Once we see the illusory nature of it, and once we recognize that everything we need is already on board.
Yeah.
Everything we've got, everything we need is on board, built into the human operating system.
I mean, I always try to operate by kind of like the net will catch you, leap. Doesn't really matter. Eventually something will happen or nothing will matter. I mean, that's basically, but like you said, it's procreation. It's looking cool. It's being the king. It's being the Lord, the top dog.
Yeah.
You know what? I mean, we wanted to, when we engaged to do this podcast, we talked about doing Alan Watts. But also you wanted to mention PTSD because I'm really curious about how it affects your artistic drive.
Sure.
For one, because one of the most profound things that you said last time we talked in the fall was that you questioned why you wanted to write to begin with. And now we're talking about ego. And obviously,
sure.
And now you're writing, I mean, I wonder, I mean, why, when you're writing such small portions of the story on a daily basis, are these three things connected? The ego, the story producing, and the discovery of why you write.
Well, I mean, they're all, everything. I operate under the belief that all things, everything is connected. I mean, so everything, of course, is connected. But in this particular situation, I don't know. Anytime I've ever been away from writing, it's always taken me a while to get back up to speed. So I think that's just a normal. It's like if I were a marathon runner and I hadn't run a marathon in 2 years.
It's gonna suck to run a marathon.
Well, I'm gonna be a little tired, right? I'm gonna have to train.
You're gonna hurt pretty bad.
So I got to get myself in a little shape. So that's some of it. Right now, I'm really clear. I'm really the two things in my head. There are three things that rattle around in my head when I think about why I write. The first one is the easiest one. I write because I can. It's a way that I'm capable of expressing myself.
That's Oscar Wilde, isn't it?
Right. Yeah, I write because I can write. And then the second, another subset of that is that writing gives, when people read writing, their writing does good. When we write things that entertain people, it does good in their life because it gives them a vacation from themselves. It gives them a vacation from their consciousness, which is, it's a from the time you wake up in the morning until the time you go to sleep at night. Sometimes even in your sleep at night, your consciousness is firing and shit's happening, right?
They even say that your lips are moving while you're while you're reading, while you're like having this inner monologue, like physicality and
the experience that you're having when you are experiencing a dream is a real experience. It's just happening inside of you. Now, the other interesting thing about this is when you're living your life and your consciousness is creating, when you're experiencing your life via your consciousness, it is also all happening inside of you. There's really no difference between the dream state and the waking state as far as your consciousness is concerned. It is completely convinced that what's happening is real. And the fact is that under neither circumstance are the things that are happening to you necessarily exactly what you think they are. So in the case of a dream, you wake up from a dream and you're like, oh, that was just a dream. You don't have to go get therapy. You don't have to set that day aside each year and recognize it with solemn, kind of a sacredness because of it being such a traumatic event. You don't have to do any of those things because you say, oh, it was just a dream, and you push it away and you get on with your life. You go back to sleep, you go do whatever. And a lot of the time we're not able to see how similar what we think is going on happening to us from outside of us in our daily lives, but it's largely the same stuff. We're taking through our consciousness, using our sensing organs, we are taking and we're manufacturing what we think is going on outside of us. And then the thoughts that we have about that generate emotions. Those emotions are designed to engage our belief in them so that we will take action. So somewhere along that way, whether it's really a stick or a snake that you see on the road, as you're walking down the way, somewhere along the way, you intersect there's a place where you can't necessarily control the fact that the thought popped into your head, oh my God, I think that's a snake. And you can't necessarily control the fact that when you thought it was a snake, you felt a flash of anxiety or fear. But you start to get a little bit of the capacity somewhere along the way in that slippery slope to say, wait a minute, I just thought I saw a snake. And then, once you begin to practice that enough, you start to realize every time you're walking down the road, you don't instantly assume it's a snake. It could be a stick.
I mean, obviously that's an attack of your adrenaline when you're kind of balancing between life and death, right? I mean, the snake is death.
Sure.
The stick is life. I mean, what is it? Am I going to die? Am I going to live?
The stick. Yeah, it's just your body trying to keep you alive. It's the same. It's the ego. It's part of that whole operating system. Keep you alive long enough to make more life. And
when you submerge into the pool and look up at the mondunity, I'm looking for a bigger word than I actually need, but the dullness or the life above you. I mean, do you sense death in that exploration of the mundane?
I mean, I don't.
Is it there haunting?
I know I'm gonna die. I know I'm gonna die. I already know I'm gonna die. It's what you can't have a tree. You can't have a tree that makes apples without apples falling off the tree.
Yeah.
And dying. I mean, and those apples that fall off the tree and die, they have seeds in them, and those seeds make more apple trees. And so apples make apples, right?
And that's what ego does. It protects you from that. You're not going to die.
Well, yeah. Ego doesn't
want you to die. You're special.
Well, and and every special snowflake is made of exactly H2O. I'm gonna die. I am gonna die, and I don't know when, and I don't know how, and it's gonna happen to me, and I will stop. And maybe some part of me goes beyond that, that is aware, but I highly doubt it. It could be. I hope I'm surprised. That'd be great. But at the same time, I'm also okay with with me being recycled. And if consciousness is a fundamental in the universe, that it would then, just like the rest of me deteriorates and goes into the ground, whatever bits of me that contain consciousness would be recycled and rolled over into,
I can't get over how special it is, though, on our planet. I mean, we've been here for what, a few billion years, right? No, or a few 100 million years. Which number is it?
I mean, right? We humans haven't been around for as long as our
like a few million. We've developed. I mean, if you look at the number, it doesn't seem significant. But what we've done from Lucy to you is significant. So she didn't know she was going to die when she fell out of that tree and cracked her head. You know what I mean? She was a thing looking for a piece of fruit, and she that day stopped looking for fruit anymore. That's what
I will do. That one day I will stop going to the grocery store. Right, one day, but my children hopefully will keep going beyond me for a little bit longer, and then maybe they'll make kids, maybe they won't. However it goes.
Right. I mean, that's the other curse of it too, right? You put them in the world to feel pain and sadness and all the emotions that caused you all the misery that you're trying to fight on a daily basis.
Because we're a peopling world, and I delayed making people for a long time.
Who said
I wanted to wait and delay people until I was in a partnership that was going to be able to sustain that. And, it ended up not being the case. So you don't have, we think we need knowledge, and we think we need control, and but we really don't need those.
Well, in terms of your creation, though, in terms of what you're making, I mean, we even brought in fatherhood to that, which is a great, topic for being the Father's Day Eve. I mean, when you create something, you write something, you're creating something, you're giving birth to it. I mean, you don't want it to die. Death is connected to everything. You want it to live. You want people to enjoy it. You want it to breathe life into other people's creations.
But see, I don't have that. I just want to just express it. And
but you do, though. You inspire people.
Well, I do, and I'm told that I do, and I want them to be inspired. And there's certainly, when I go off and teach workshops and things, I want people to have those things, but I never assume that I can give that to them, because I already know that every bit of inspiration anybody needs already lives inside of them, and that there's not an ounce of anything that I can really do to either help that or hurt that, because
that's very true.
they have all of the power, and it's theirs to access or not access. And so it's, but yeah, I mean, I want people to, I want to help people access the inspiration and insight and imagination and creativity that's inside of them already. And I'm doing some of that, right? I don't know if we talked about this before, but one of the things that's come out of all of this is that I was doing, I'm doing some organizational consulting and building this little consultancy that I'm, just very slowly putting together. But one of the realizations I've had in the last few months is that rather than working with orgs, which is kind of hard, getting teams, getting a board together to meet and go through stuff, I'm gonna do some one-on-one stuff and do some coaching around around consciousness and creativity, and how do we empower ourselves to access the things that are already inside of us that we just don't know how to get to.
Do you have suggestions that you want to share with me?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, well, the first thing I would do first thing I would say is to, the starting point is to know that that what you need is already there. You don't need to look outside of you. It's already in you. The wisdom, the common sense, the imagination, the insight, all of the emotions, every span of emotion that you have ever experienced in your life or that you ever will experience is already in you and is created by you. It's manufactured by your body, right? Every
you know what's interesting though? What about intelligence? I mean, I want to hear, obviously I'm interrupting your thought process, but I mean, obviously, yes, the instinctual stuff is there, but intelligence might be lacking. Things that, like, thinking about Albert Einstein, right? Putting his mind to work in creating the theory of relativity. There's no freaking way in hell by the time I die, I'm going to do anything remotely like that.
Well,
I mean, even
Albert Einstein was a patent clerk who had an insight.
Right.
He
I mean, I guess at the end of the day, his insight was genius, and we think it's genius, but to him, it was just a Let's see what they do about this.
But what I'm saying is, where does genius come from?
Inspiration.
If we're all
perspiration.
Well, but but genius, that type of aha, is nearly always an epiphany. It's nearly always an insight. It's nearly always a discrete moment where that person suddenly saw things from a different vantage point and had a different understanding of a different relationship to the world or to what they were looking at than what they had before.
Based on the stuff they ingested. I mean, you ingest stuff.
What they ingested, right? What they ingested.
And,
sure, yes.
Exactly. You put something in, something comes up.
Yeah, and so you have some aspect of us that's a computer, right? It's meat, and you put stuff in, but there's also this consciousness that we don't quite fully understand yet that interacts and interfaces with the meat, and it gives people that boost. So, where do all of my potentials and capacity come from? Well, it comes from there. It comes from that space. It comes from that consciousness. That's that thing that makes me, that thing that makes me alive and gives me a sense of an experience of life. Every critter has some level of consciousness that of what it means to be itself, right? Paramecium.
If I don't eat, I will die. If I don't do this, I can't reproduce. I need to eat this piece of sugar to split down the middle. I mean, people do.
So what it means,
but things.
What it means to be a cat. A cat has a sense of what it means to be a cat, and that's their experience of life. And we have that, and we get that through consciousness and thought. Not our specific thoughts, but thought itself as a thing, as a principle at work. We use the power of thought, and that it wires our entire body together, and it runs all of it, right? Our brain, our central nervous system, all emotions are rapid thought, or supercharged thoughts to get you to take action, right? It's an emotion. It's to energize you and to take motion, or to make motion, to get moving. So
and you're trying to diagnose. You're trying to diagnose those little tiny pieces of the thought that make your life kind of bad. And
well, I don't anymore. I don't diagnose. I don't. I recognize that thought is fleeting. Thought is arbitrary. Thought. I am going to have 60 to 80 thoughts in a day, and those 60 to 80 thoughts will generate any number of emotions. But I guess what I'm really doing is and this is a change over a few years of my life. I used to be a guy who went to therapy and thought, you need to talk about all your problems and you need to do all of these different things. You should have a practice. You should have a, whatever it is you're doing. I used to think that. Now I actually don't. I actually think that we need to shut up and sit down and go to the bottom of the pool. Just be quiet. And in that quiet space, don't take ourselves too seriously. Don't take our thoughts and feelings too seriously, unless it's really a saber tooth. If you're walking through the jungle and a great big cat jumps out and says "rawr," okay, run like hell, or pick up a stick. But most of the time we are activating our stress hormones, our stress, all of that gunk. That's firing over things like traffic, deadlines, people at work that might not like us. Those are ridiculous reasons to access this super powered keep us alive shit that floods our body with chemicals. And then people keep those chemicals going by feeding it, right?
What's really interesting to me though, you had the before you started getting the right type of treatment for you, you were producing, not countless, but I'll use the word countless numbers of short fiction pieces that are being published in, authentic literary magazines. You're publishing novels, right? I mean, you're doing this amazing, miraculous thing that there are millions of people out there looking at you salivating, going, how come I can't be that good, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And you're going, it's not good enough. I don't want to think like this anymore. I want to diagnose it, rip it apart, take these hoses out, see if they actually are needed, and then put it back together as streamlined as possible.
That's not. I think that's what you think I'm doing, but that's not what I'm doing at all. I'm just living my life. I mean, it's all I'm doing at this point is just living my life and letting my life settle, letting the mud. Somebody gives you a mason jar full of muddy water. The best way to let it settle isn't to run it through a strainer. It's to just let it sit, and eventually it'll settle. And that's all.
No, it's very true. No, it's very true.
Learning to just settle. I'm just learning.
If you get upset and you try to strain out those individual pieces of mud, it's going to be so frustrating. And that's what anger is like, isn't it?
Well, and that's what I used to do with my writing career, right? When I was trying to write, so we have to look at my writing career in bits. Mm-hmm. So the longest stretch of my writing career, I had symptoms of PTSD, but I did not acknowledge having PTSD or really understand that I had PTSD.
Would you what were the symptoms of your PTSD?
I had depression. It was mostly just my initial entree into PTSD was just prolonged depression, and I took SSRIs for about a decade.
You go to a psychiatrist, that's what they're going to give you immediately.
I did. Well, in this case, I went to a primary care physician, and then I had a therapist, and I did therapy off and on. I've done therapy off and on for 20 some years. And I did medication for about a decade solid. And I used to believe, you had to parse it out, figure it out, tear it apart, put it back together. No, you don't need to. Your psyche, just like your body, is a self-correcting. It's a self-correcting feature. It's your body. When you cut yourself, every cut you've ever had is healed. Every time you've had a cold, you got better. Every time you've had the flu, so far you got better. Now there will come a time when you might get sick and not get better. Leaves fall off of trees. That's just the nature of life.
That's very true.
What's really happened for me is that I have stopped spending a lot of energy trying to figure out how to live my life, and instead I have put a tiny amount of energy into a growing understanding of how life works. And that tiny growing understanding of how life works has taken care of all of the how should I live my life or not live my life questions. So I don't have any of that. I don't have any pressure around my writing career. I don't have any big stress about it. I used to be really stressed out if I wasn't able to hit 1,000 words a day, or if I didn't have a business plan, or if I didn't have 3 or 4 contracts lined up and a bunch of projects that I used to feel, if I wanted to write but couldn't write, I would feel a lot of stress and anxiety and anger and frustration over being.
I identify with everything you're saying.
I have none of that anymore, Bryan, and I don't ever want it back in my life again. It did not serve me. Did I create a huge body of work in the midst of those feelings? Yes. Towards the tail end, how did that go for me? Not super.
Yeah, I guess my big symptoms, not what you wanted to see happen, was it?
My big symptoms, the big symptoms that showed up for me showed up in 2009 and 2010, right after the birth of my kids and the death of my parents. And then those symptoms continued to be big, and and as those symptoms would come into my life, they would interfere with my ability to write. I'd get all tangled up in all the feelings around all of it, and I wouldn't be able to do it. I'd be blocked. It just wasn't working. When I finally got some peace, I've had these treatments in Chicago. Those took out the noise so that I could hear the engine. Once I could hear the engine, I could start making adjustments to the engine. And for me, the engine was my relationship with my thoughts and my feelings, and my understanding level within my consciousness, and its need to level up. Our consciousness levels up, right? Our understanding of ourselves and of who we are, we evolve through epiphanies and insights. We grow and stretch, and we get to a higher vantage point where we see more. Einstein climbed a big tall tree and saw stuff, and that's what happened from him.
But his brain was different too, though, wasn't it?
No, but I don't think
the way he thought was different. I mean, I've read ideas about his thought experiments. I mean, he would go places that people normally aren't able to go. I mean, granted, he's taking stuff in and being able to just regurgitate it in his own little special way, his unique fingerprint of thinking.
Yeah,
but I mean,
but we all have our own thing, right? We all have our capacity.
We have our own superpower.
We all have, but whatever it is, right? Whatever that is. But I think whatever that it is, like you have some people that are very gifted musicians and other people who could not carry a tune in a bucket. I mean, there are certainly areas of natural proclivity and giftedness and whatnot. I know that some of my areas of natural giftedness do not lie in the direction of numbers and details. That those are not my strengths. So we have strengths and weaknesses and all of that, but at the same time, the mechanism still remains the same. That it starts internally, and life happens from the inside out. Emotions and thoughts drive.
That's that key, isn't it? Internal. Nothing happens externally. You might take external things, but you put them inside you to use them.
You have to run it through. You have to run it through the filter of you in order. So, which is why that's how you can have a bank robbery in a bank, and you say there are 5 people that go through this bank robbery. They're all roughly the same distance from the perpetrator. None of them are physically harmed, but one of them, it's the most exciting day of their life, and they've never ever experienced anything like it, and they decide they need to go into law enforcement so that they can make a difference. Another one, it's the worst thing that ever happened to them in their life. They are riddled with anxiety. They develop PTSD. They lose their job. They've got to go get therapy. All this stuff. Another one, it was tough and it was hard to watch, but I got through it. It's just a rough day. Another one, it was they were really, really, really glad that nobody was hurt, and so it wasn't a big deal at all. They're just glad nobody was hurt. They're done with it. And the other one, it was so exciting and so thrilling and the most amazing day they'd ever had, so they decided to start a life of crime too. And so you have 5 people all go through exactly the same experience, stressful, scary, potentially experience, having different responses. Why would we? Because we have this idea in our culture that stress, things come with points of stress. If you go through a bank robbery, well, that's probably 200 points of stress. If you're moving, well, that's probably 1,000 points of stress. If you're going through a divorce, well, that's probably 2,000 points of stress. But that's not how it works. If it worked like that, then everybody would add 250 stress points from going through the bank robbery. And everybody who goes through a divorce would all take the same amount of damage, right? We don't, because we all respond to life differently, because we're all living our own individual lives based on our perceptions and our thoughts and our feelings, and not everybody sees things the same way. So, but we all see things through the same faulty equipment, right? We're all unreliable narrators of our experience, believing that the things are happening to us from outside of us, when in reality, we're attaching our belief to what's happening to us. Does that make sense?
Oh, totally. I was trying to interject. I was trying to interject stuff. I'm like trying to jump in between pauses. I had you on mute. It's like, how come he's not letting me talk? Have you heard of the Navy SEALs and regular Army PTSD study that was done not too long ago, or I don't know how long ago it was, but basically it stated that a regular soldier, like a truck driver or even an infantryman, will have a greater chance of getting PTSD than a Navy SEAL. And a Navy SEAL see like a lot more combat. And the reason probably it makes sense is that the Navy SEAL gets a lot more training, is more prepared, is wanting to do his job with that. So he's not going to regret the decisions he has to make while doing those jobs. But if a truck driver has to run over 4 kids because if he stops, he could die, that truck driver is going to be haunted for the rest of his life. But what he had to do just to get from point A to point B. I mean, it's backwards. I mean, it should be the Navy SEAL because he murders people every single day, potentially.
Well, but it kind of shores up what I'm saying, which is that we're all living our own individual experience. We're all choosing our own adventure as we go, right? And so everybody's experience is going to be different
based on their experiences.
But how their perception of that experience, right? Because we all have different perceptions, and it's what you believe about a thing ultimately that affects you, right? It's if you believe that going through that bank robbery was emotionally harmful to you, chances are good it's going to be emotionally harmful to you.
Based on the end of your life, probably. I mean, a lot of people start realizing what death means, and it haunts them. What is death? Where do we come from? When my children were born, I started to kind of realize they came from nothing. You know what I mean? I started playing with the idea of
came from you and the person you made them with.
Yeah, I mean, I started thinking about
from the people who made you, and so people.
It's weird. It's honestly, if you really think about it, at one point there was an ancestor wearing armor, carrying a sword or some sort. I mean,
at one point there was a paramecium hooking up with another paramecium.
Right.
You know, these tiny little single-celled creatures saying, "Hey, let's get out of the ocean and see what's going on."
A grand of yeast on a volcanic wall sucking down sugars. I mean.
Exactly. I mean, it's kind of awesome, and it's I mean, I find it all pretty fascinating.
Oh, it's beautiful. I mean, if you believe in entropy, then there's an end. But if you don't, and the universe is ever expanding, then there is actually no death. And the Big Bang wasn't even a beginning; it was something else. So we don't even know what that was. So everything that ever was, is, and will always be in the box that we call the universe for all time.
And all we really have is this, right? The second, right now, here now, right here. This moment now.
I mean, that's why I call it like a simulation, right? Because everything is kind of like a simulation. You're simulating life based on what you already think it is.
If you hold your thumb out in front of if you hold your thumb out at arm's length and look at it, that width of your thumb is actually how much high density vision you have, and everything around it is everything outside of that narrow strip. That's your brain reconstructing it based on what it perceives.
Oh, that's pretty cool. So you know what your thumb looks like. You're not actually seeing your thumb. You're imagining what your thumb looks like.
Well, there is that too. The other side of it is
your thumb, you're holding it.
You are all just all you are is a bunch of vibrating bits.
It's really true.
Distances apart, and that's
I used to get freaked out in school. I was thinking about my desk underneath me just being atoms, and how the hell is it forming this desk? I still don't have a really realistic answer to that. I don't know why a desk is a desk.
Yeah. Well, it's a desk because you say because somebody told you it's a desk.
That's pretty much it.
Somebody told you it's a desk. Why? What makes Bryan a Bryan? What makes Bryan a Bryan?
Somebody told me that's what the case was.
And then you believed it, and then you continued to, and then you started to tell other people who Bryan is, and you tell yourself every day when you wake up who Bryan is. But what happens? What happens when Bryan's asleep? Is Bryan still Bryan?
Oh, no, it's very interesting, isn't it? No, normally not. And even when I'm dreaming, I don't think there's an identity there. It's more something else, right? You're never the dude that has to go to the bathroom in your dream. You're the guy that's either having a nightmare or,
Yeah, but you always think you're you, right? You never see your dream. I mean, I don't know. I can't speak for your dreams, but I am experiencing my dream.
You're experiencing you in your dreams too. But are you your name? You're not really your name. I'm not Bryan in my dreams.
Well, I'm having an experience of consciousness, and I've had some pretty vivid. I only remember 1 or 2 dreams a year. I've had some pretty vivid ones, and I was me. There was one dream where I was somebody, but it was me in a totally different, right? I was being hunted by somebody, and they wanted to hurt my daughter, and so it was a powerful dream of empowerment, among other things. But I mean, our consciousness, it can go for a ride, while we're in bed thinking we're doing other things. It's I find it fascinating, and so that's where a lot of my creativity has gone, is into, I'm researching to develop. I've got a couple of different projects out of the stuff around thought and consciousness.
I want to hear what you want to do with it in terms of fiction. Like,
Well, I don't have a plan for right now. I can tell you my only fiction plan right now is this short story and then maybe some young adult or middle grade fiction.
Okay.
But I'm not. I mean, I'm not. I don't know. I've thought about maybe doing some bits of, you know how you do the kind of a fictionalized nonfiction where you kind of Bob was going to a sales conference in Tampa when his flight was delayed to a small island where he met a young man full of wisdom. You know what that kind of that kind of thing. It's that kind of fictionalized nonfiction. I've thought about doing some of that, but I don't know. I've got a couple of
this
nonfiction
idea.
projects.
I write a lot of like the fabric of the universe, what's behind there, looking at, you know, when we're blind to what reality actually is. What we do is just disguise reality with excuses for itself.
Sure.
You know, theories like gravity and this is what's happening because of blah, 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 but we don't know shit. We don't even know what's outside of our neighborhood normally. We're barely in New York. We're barely in New York.
No, I think that we're, I don't have any, in my writing life right now, I'm getting back to it. I've got some middle grade ideas, and you know, I mean,
what's that mean to you? What's a middle grade idea?
Books
for like your daughter's age.
For my daughter's age, yeah. I've got a one about evil twin princesses who ask their father on their 10th birthday to if he'll abdicate and let them have the kingdom. I've got one called Mandy Dawkins Walks the Shine. It's a little older. I think she's 12, and she learns how to walk the interstitial spaces that connect the habited worlds across the cosmos, which is and it's a conscious. It's a kind of a world or it's a space that she moves into that's made of consciousness, but
I like that.
Seems to be this dark, dreary forest that's scattered with all these different doors that she can find ways to open. So there's that. I mean, those sorts of things. And you know, and then short fiction, and then possibly some type of adult fiction for novel, you know, in the novella format. I don't know. I don't need any of that anymore because I'm letting the water settle. I'm coming to life differently than I used to. I don't have.
Well, yeah, I mean, ultimately, you just finished something amazing, right? I mean, you just finished a series, so.
Well, yeah, it's been it's been 2.5 years. So if you think about it, it took me 10 years to write the series, right? I have spent a quarter of that time on sabbatical now, 2.5 years. It's time to get back to work, I think. So I'm.
But you also spent 7.5 years writing the thing, and
10 years.
Impressive.
It was
10 years.
2006 to 2016. Though I mean, if you took it down to the actual hours and days, I probably spent roughly 6 months on each book, except for the first book, which was 6 weeks. And it's just that my time got stretched with all of the interruptions of work. But you know, now I'm kind of I don't know. I have a vague notion, you know, I want to give people that vacation for their consciousness, tell the stories that are inside of me that need to be told. But the other thing is, it's a good part-time job, and it pays good money. It's a part-time job that I can do whenever I want on my spare time. And there's a market out there of people who will buy things from me if I will write them. So that's as compelling right now as anything.
Right. That's really
making extra money for my daughter's college fund and so that we can buy a camper van at some point. And, you know, I mean, just all the little life things that, you know, writing lets me go around and take research trips. And I mean, it's a good, fun thing. So I want to be doing it. I recognized that I needed a different relationship with it and with myself than what I had before. And I needed some time to get done with, you know, get settled into the new job and into the new house, the new life. Last time I talked to you, my girls were just starting 3rd grade. They just finished 3rd grade yesterday. So this is a good time for me to just kind of get the car back on the road. So I got a couple of projects, man. I don't know. Cool. I'm going to try and tackle 1 or 2 things a year very slowly and give myself a few years to bounce back. I'm going to start going to LA at least a couple times a year, get down there, start making friends. I've always wanted to work in that industry a little bit too. So I've got friends, people that'll put me up. I've got contacts through my Edward Bear movie options. So I'm going to get down there and start making friends and just see what happens. I think where I'm at is that I've always believed that life life happens when you engage in life.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I'm just going to go engage in life and let life happen.
That's really cool.
So,
yeah, this conversation was fantastic as well. I really appreciate you being willing to come back on and engage with me about this topic in particular. It's an important one because a lot of people don't realize that they can be suffering from something like this and it be messing up every single molecule of their lives.
Yeah.
And the solution's not easy.
No, well, PTSD it's a tough one, and I think that people have to triage and get their symptoms under control medically if they need to. For me, and I still will tell people, since we're talking about PTSD, the best thing in the world is I think it's called the Global PTSI Foundation. Dr. Eugene Lipov is the chief medical officer, and he is my doctor. He's my PTSD doctor. They've been on the show Doctors recently. With the same treatment that I underwent 3.5 years ago. I have continued to mostly be symptom free. I've had a few re-triggerings of PTSD since you and I talked, and they were probably the more significant ones that I've had in the last few years. But in the big scheme of things, they tied up about a week of my life as opposed to months or years. And I knew the whole way through what was going on. I knew that it would be fine. I knew that, I understood that my body's reaction to things was disproportionate to the actual events, and that it was just my little gorilla getting out of the pocket. So, I've had a lot of peace of mind there since I had my stellate ganglion blocks, and I credit a lot of this last 2.5 years or so with this new relationship that I have with my thinking and with myself and with life, right? Where I'm not trying to push my life and make it happen. I'm just living my life, and it is happening in a type of flow as opposed to me driving it.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's so cool that, my range probably isn't as great as others, but you're willing to come on here and share the information and get people kind of awareness on it. And, people are thinking it's just about combat. And, I'm not going to discount that because obviously that's a nightmare. It's a horrible ordeal that veterans go through. But thank you so much. And is there any way that you would be willing to send me some information that I can put in the show notes just in case? I asked you that before and you already did.
Actually, if you go look at my website on PTSD, there's links and everything there.
Cool. I'm going to steal it all. I'll put it in the show notes so people are aware of where to go.
No, I appreciate it, sir. Well, I hope you have a fine Father's Day.
Yeah, you too. Happy Father's Day.